Now, all the people who are implicated in the Jeffrey Epstein case had immunity from prosecution, but the Supreme Court's ruling in the Ghislaine Maxwell appeal has just removed that immunity, making it possible for the government to prosecute any other co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein. Here are the details. Here's a quick message from the sponsor of this video, Zocdoc. You ever do anything where something's off? Your eye's swollen, your neck got a weird pain, or you have a cold that just won't quit. And instead of calling a doctor, you scroll TikTok and YouTube like that's gonna fix it. Or maybe you're just too busy. You think it'll heal on its own. Or you're like, I don't know which doctor to go to. Trust me, I've made every excuse in the book too. But now I use Zocdoc, and it makes things a lot easier. Zocdoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors and instantly book appointments. We're talking about over 100,000 doctors from across every specialty, from mental health, dental, primary care, urgent care, you name it, they got it. And with Zocdoc, you can filter by insurance, see who's nearby, and check real reviews from verified patients. Now, simply just pick your time slot and boom, appointments usually happen between 24 and 72 hours, sometimes even the same day. Now, full disclosure, I personally use Zocdoc, and the doctor that I go to now, I found on Zocdoc. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to Zocdoc.com/Nate the Lawyer. The link is in the pinned comment or in the description of this video. Now, back to the story. So in my last video, we talked about how Jeffrey Epstein made a deal with the government that he would plead guilty and get 14 months in jail, which he would serve on the weekend. And in exchange, all his co-conspirators, everybody who did unspeakable things to children, would have immunity from all of those horrific crimes. Now, for those of you whose mouths are open and are shocked that they got immunity, here's the actual paperwork to show that I'm not making this up. Now, in this non-prosecution agreement, when you scroll down to page 5 of 7. In consideration of Epstein's agreement to plead guilty and to provide compensation in the manner described above, if Epstein successfully fulfills all the terms and conditions of this agreement, the United States also agrees it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirator of Epstein, included but not limited to Sarah Keelan, Adriana Ross, Leslie Goff, or Nadia Morisinkova. So this agreement was so thorough that it immunized not only Epstein, but anyone who co-conspired with Epstein to commit these horrible crimes. Now, one of the people who received immunity under this deal was Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, in comes the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, who says, hey, that deal is only good in the federal district down there in Florida. It's not good up here in New York. So they prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell and got a conviction.
This morning, that stunning verdict in the high-profile sex trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, the jury finding the British socialite guilty on 5 of 6 counts. Maxwell, who once ran in the circle of presidents and princes, led out of the courtroom Wednesday by 2 U.S. Marshals, now waking up behind bars, facing up to 65 years in prison.
A unanimous jury has found Ghislaine Maxwell guilty of one of the worst crimes imaginable, facilitating and participating in the sexual abuse of children, crimes that she committed with her longtime partner and co-conspirator, Jeffrey Epstein.
Now, I know many of you may be saying, well, hold on, how could she be prosecuted for those crimes when there was a deal in place with the federal government that said none of Epstein's co-conspirators would be prosecuted?
In their petition, her defense attorneys write in part, quote, a defendant should be able to rely on a promise that the United States will not prosecute again without being subject to a gotcha in some other jurisdiction that chooses to interpret that plain language promise in some other way.
Now, to understand what happened here clearly, you have to understand the federal court system here in the United States. So, the United States federal courts are broken down into 94 different districts. Now, 3 of those 94 districts are in Florida, divided into the Northern, Middle, and Southern District. Now, Epstein was prosecuted in the Southern District of Florida. Now, here's the million-dollar question. Are deals that are struck in one district, here, the Southern District of New York, does that bind the federal government in all other 94 districts across the country? Well, in the United States, some appeals courts believe yes, if you come to an agreement with the government in one district, that binds all districts. But you have some other courts who believe that it doesn't. Now, we got to go back to our 94 district courts, because those courts are organized into 13 different circuits. Now, the circuits are essentially the appeals court that hears appeals from the district court level. So here are a couple examples. If you're in New York, Southern District of New York, the appeals court, or the circuit that's going to hear your appeal, is going to be the Second Circuit Circuit Court of Appeals. If you're in Texas, one of the district courts in the state of Texas, then it's the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that is going to hear your appeal from one of those district courts. And since we're talking about Florida, it's the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. So, not to confuse you, 94 district courts all across the country, separated into 13 different circuits. That's where you appeal to. And then if you want to appeal higher than that, you go to the Supreme Court. Simple and sweet. But now let's get back to our initial question. If you make a deal in one district, does that bind the entire United States government, or does that just bind the prosecutors in that district? Now, I know most of you think it would be uniform across the country, but it is not. Depending on which circuit you're at or which district you're in, the answer is going to be different. And when it comes to this issue, where if you make an agreement with one federal prosecutor in one district, whether it covers the entire United States or just covers that one particular district, the circuits are split. For instance, the Third Circuit, the Fourth Circuit, the Eighth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit all agree that if the government comes to a non-prosecution deal in any district, it binds all U.S. attorneys nationwide. So let's apply this to the Maxwell situation. If Ghislaine Maxwell was being prosecuted in the Third Circuit, then those federal prosecutors would not have been able to charge or convict her on any crime because they would have held that the agreement in Florida applied in the Third Circuit. Now, that is obviously very different than what happened in the Second Circuit, and the Seventh Circuit also has this rule that unless the agreement itself says it's nationwide, then the agreement is limited to the district in which it's made. So as of right now, you have two circuits saying, hey, those agreements are localized to those districts, and you have four circuits saying, no, those agreements apply nationwide. Who makes the call to determine which side is right? Are the four circuits that say it's nationwide, are they right? Or are the two circuits, the minorities, who says it applies only to the district, are they correct? Now, generally when this happens, the Supreme Court will take a case and say, okay, you know what? It's the Second Circuit that has it right, or they'll say it's the Fifth Circuit that has it right. Now, this is not only important to Maxwell, but all those other co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein. If the Supreme Court says, hey, that deal is good nationwide, then none of those other people who did those unthinkable things to children could be prosecuted because they have immunity. But if the Supreme Court says, well, you know, that deal is only good in Florida, not the rest of the country, then all those people have real criminal liability. So what do you think the Supreme Court did? Do you think they took the case and resolved the issue and said, hey, a deal's a deal nationwide? Or do you think they said, well, it doesn't matter, it's only good in the Southern District? Well, the Supreme Court said, well, we're not even going to look at the case.
The Supreme Court will not hear is that of Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal. The former girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein is serving a 20-year prison sentence for her role in luring underage girls for Epstein to abuse. Maxwell's attorneys argued she never should have been convicted because of an agreement Epstein's attorneys had previously reached with federal prosecutors in Florida. Her attorneys say they will continue to pursue paths to justice, including possibly seeking clemency from President Trump.
So what does this mean? Well, this means that the Supreme Court made no decision, and the circuit split that we just talked about is still the same. So what this means is that the Epstein co-conspirators have immunity in the Third, Fourth, Eighth, and Ninth Circuits from any federal prosecution, no matter where the deal was. But they can be prosecuted in the Second and Seventh Circuit, just like Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, let's just keep it 100%. This DOJ under Pam Bondi is not prosecuting anybody for any Epstein crimes. And we absolutely know of 4 co-conspirators that were actually named in the document as people who assisted Jeffrey Epstein in sex trafficking underage people. Here they are. The States also agrees it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirator of Epstein, included but not limited to Sarah Keelan, Adriana Ross, Leslie Goff, or Nadia Morisinkova. Now, because the Supreme Court didn't come to a decision, these 4 people can be prosecuted in the Southern District of New York for those same crimes that Ghislaine Maxwell was prosecuted for and potentially get decades in prison. Now, Pam Bondi is obviously covering up this whole Epstein thing and hiding the fact that there are certain people who are on the list that she doesn't want to make public. But it gets even worse than that because she's even saying that there's no one else they can prosecute, even though the documents literally list the names of the people who you can prosecute as co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein.
But perhaps the biggest bombshell, investigators say they found no incriminating client list of Epstein's, no credible credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals and no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties.
So do you guys believe that there is no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties, like the ones listed in the documents? Let's just keep it real. There is a massive cover-up of these PDF files, and it's by Pam Bondi. She is covering for them. We all know it. We can try to make excuses, try to pretend it's not happening, but it is happening. She's actively covering up for PDF files, and the reason why she's doing it, I don't know. I don't know if somebody's telling her to do it. I don't know if she's getting a check, but it's more than obvious because they can prosecute the 4 people in the document. They take them right there to the Southern District of New York and say, hey, we just did it to Maxwell. We're going to do it to these 4 women too, but they're not doing it because they're protected. Why? How? I don't know. Tell me I'm crazy in the comment section, because either Pam Bondi is covering for PDF files or she needs to be fired for incompetence. That's the bottom line. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. My name is Nate the Lawyer. I'm out. Peace.